so it's time for our Donald Trump mushroom gobblers of the day. We have a few of them today. Let's talk about Sean Duffy for a moment, doing an absolute terrible job in running the FAA. It is just, first of all, the amount of plane crashes we've had since Donald Trump took office is unsurmountable compared to years past. And the delays and the confusion and everything else that is going on within at our airports. But Sean Duffy isn't really focused on that. I want you to listen to the Trump gobbler himself, Sean Duffy, very upset that people are wearing slippers and pajamas on airplanes. Folks, I'm not making this up. Have a listen.
We've seen an uptick in maybe a degradation in civility in the airspace, and so I thought it is appropriate to. Again, you can't legislate that, right? You can't mandate it, but I think if you ask people, could we do better? Could we be better? I think you won't get a better result unless you make the ask, and so I'm just making the ask. Let's all travel better together. And again, I think it honors our country, it honors our families, it honors our fellow passengers. And so I've made the ask, and again, I think we can do a better job. And by the way, most flights are pretty darn good, and people do behave really well with one another. It's just a few of those times where, again, don't take your shoes off and put your feet on the chair ahead of you. That's just, or maybe don't play your movie without headphones on. Just some simple things that can annoy the folks around you. We don't have to do that. And so just be cognizant and courteous. That's the ask.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe you should tell that to your boss, the orange turd, you imbecile. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean Duffy, another Trump mushroom gobbler. Basent is another one, and that rings true for a lot of different reasons that I won't get into. But as you know, inflation has been going up for the past 5 months, month to month. So what is Basent's answer to that? Just drive to a state that doesn't have high inflation. I'm not kidding. Here's what he said.
Chris, I can tell you that the Council on Economic Advisors has a study. You know the best way to bring your inflation rate down? Move from a blue state to a red state. Blue state inflation is 0.5% higher, and that is because they don't deregulate, they keep prices up, energy is higher.
Just according to the consumer prices, inflation was at 2.3% back in April. In September, 3%. But let me ask you about tariffs, because there's this big announcement on tariffs.
So they get into tariffs next, but I just want you to understand that the Trump mushroom gobbler himself, Basent, actually thinks that you should just move to red states and that'll be the end-all be-all for inflation and that'll solve all the problems. What a wonderful thing to say. Because Basent is a mushroom gobbler, and so is NATO Ambassador Matthew Whitaker, who finally is admitting a little bit that there is some truth to the fact that Putin hasn't made a single concession. Because as you know, in this deal, Russia's not offering up anything. Donald Trump continues to wear the Vladimir Putin evil, murderous dictator knee pads and blame Zelensky for everything and want to reward Vladimir Putin for invading our allies. Matthew Whitaker with a sliver of truth, ladies and gentlemen.
You need both sides to agree, and we don't really see much from Vladimir Putin. I just spoke with General Jack Keane, and he made the case that, look, Putin has yet to give up anything so far. Watch this.
Putin, he hasn't given up one concession in all of these months that we've been negotiating with. And why hasn't he made any concession? Because he sees the more the war gets protracted, sure, he'll come to any negotiation you want to have because that delays outcomes. The more the war is protracted and the more the killing goes on, he believes he can weaken the resolve of the United States and its leadership, the European and their leadership.
What about that, Ambassador?
Well, I mean, there is some truth to what, the general says, but let's remember that there's no perfect answer to this situation. Russia invaded Ukraine almost 4 years ago now. It has been a war of massive casualties. The dying has to end. I think President Trump sees that clearly. And so, neither side is going to get what they want. And we don't know until we have a deal that's hammered out who's giving up what. I mean, certainly The Russians have a stronger position on the battlefield. You know, they're making small tactical gains every week, but
right.
That's not how the rules-based order works. And ultimately, unless Europe and the United States decide to take a different tack, this is where we end up, is negotiating a peace deal from the reality. And I think we can all live in what-if worlds, but we have to live in the real world.
What I find so ridiculous about that statement is the fact that he thinks that Ukraine should be giving anything up. They did nothing wrong. Russia invaded Ukraine. We have an evil, murderous dictator, and Russia should be the ones that are giving up all the concessions. Ukraine shouldn't be giving up anything, but yet he thinks both should be giving things up. Why? So the message that you are sending to other evil, murderous dictators around the world is, if you invade our allies, we will make sure that you don't have to give up any concessions at all. That's really what Donald Trump and his administration are doing. And again, I would say that Matthew Whitaker is beyond a shadow of a doubt, a Trump mushroom gobbler.